CEO mocked the single dad wiping down her machine shop. His patent quietly owned her merger. It was an ordinary Tuesday on the floor of Marchetti Dynamics, and the floor smelled of cutting oil and hot steel the way it always did at the start of a shift. Silas Renner moved down the row of 5-axis machines with a gray rag and a bottle of solvent, wiping the swarf off the guard glass on each one before the day crew came in. He had been doing it for 3 years. He did it well. He did not hurry. The big roller doors at the east end of the building were still down, and the only light came from the overhead sodium lamps and the small amber work lights inside each machine cell, so the whole shop sat in a kind of warm half-dark that he had come to like. He was 42 years old, lean and broad through the shoulders, with short dark brown hair going gray at the temples, and a few days of stubble he never quite kept ahead of. There was a faded scar near his left eyebrow from a lathe accident half a lifetime ago. He wore a dark green flannel with the sleeves rolled to the forearms, a plain cotton shirt under it, worn leather boots, and a thin steel wristwatch. On his left hand was a wedding band he had not taken off in the 3 years since Maeve died. At the 4th machine, he stopped. The spindle had left a faint pattern on the guard glass that he did not like, a fine spray with a stutter in it, the signature of a tool starting to chatter before any gauge would catch it. He took the stub of a pencil from his breast pocket and a scrap of paper from the cart and wrote 3 lines in small block letters and folded the note over the machine's start key where the operator would find it. Check the collet runout before the first cut. He did not sign it. He never signed the notes. A man who left his name on small kindnesses, Maeve used to say, was really leaving it on himself, and Silas had stopped wanting his name on anything at all. At 7 sharp, the east doors rolled up, and 3 black SUVs came across the lot and stopped in a tidy row by the visitor entrance. Vivienne Marchetti stepped out of the first one in a charcoal suit cut close, dark hair pulled back, heels that found the painted concrete and did not care for it. Behind her came 4 men in better suits than anyone on the floor would ever own, men from Aldbourne Industries, and a thin, nervous fellow from her own legal team carrying a tablet against his chest like a shield. She had inherited the company 18 months ago when her father died at his desk, and she had spent every one of those months learning that inheriting a thing and holding it were 2 different jobs. The Aldbourne merger was supposed to be the proof. $400 million, a defense contract pipeline, a clean exit from the cash crunch her father had hidden from her until the will was read. She walked the visitors down the main aisle the way she had rehearsed, talking about throughput and tolerances, and she did not see Silas until she nearly walked into his cleaning cart. He stepped back to give her room. He said nothing. He was good at saying nothing. "You," she said. The Aldbourne men had stopped to look at a spindle, and she wanted them looking at the machines, not at a man in a flannel shirt wiping glass during an executive walkthrough. "We don't pay you to be seen. Take that and the smell of it somewhere else until we're done." A few of the day crew had drifted in by then, and they heard it. Silas looked at her for 1 second longer than a man in his position was supposed to, and then he nodded once, picked up the handle of the cart, and rolled it toward the far bay without a word. In the wire tray on the side of the cart, under the rags, was a folded sheet of construction paper with a crayon drawing on it, a house and a sun, and 2 stick figures holding hands. But she did not see that, and he did not show her. The lead Aldbourne man, a silver-haired one named Crow, watched Silas go and then looked back at the nearest machine. "These are the seal assemblies," he said. "The turbine seals. That's really the asset here, isn't it? Everything else is fixtures and floor space." "That's the asset," Vivian said. "Renner seal," Crow said, reading the small etched plate on the housing. "Funny name for a part." "It's just a name," she said, and moved them along, and did not think about it again that day. Silas drove home at 3 to the small rented house on the north edge of town where the streets gave way to birch and chain link. Wren was on the porch with a library book open across her knees and her shoes not quite reaching the boards. She was 8, brown-haired, serious in the way of children who have learned early that the world does not always hold. She had her mother's habit of going very still when she was thinking. "Mr. Alvarez next door has a gate that doesn't latch," she reported. "I told him you'd fix it." "Did you charge him?" "I told him you fix things for free if they're old people." "That's a bad business model," Silas said. and she grinned because it was the thing he always said. He made dinner, eggs and toast and the last of the good tomatoes, and they ate at the table with the television off, the way they had eaten since Maeve got sick. Afterward, Wren drew at the kitchen table while he washed the 2 plates in the pan, and when she went up to bed she left the new drawing on the counter for him to find, the way she did most nights. He looked at it under the range light. A man, a girl, and in the corner, smaller, a woman with long hair, drawn the way Wren always drew her, off to one side, watching. He set it in the drawer with the others and turned off the light. What he did not do that night, and had not done in 3 years, was open the dented aluminum case on the top shelf of the hall closet, behind the towels where the patents were. He knew exactly what was in it, the original seal drawings, the filing receipt, a photograph from the day the first prototype held pressure for a full hour, and Maeve had walked down from the metallurgy lab with 2 paper cups of coffee and said, "Well, you built something that doesn't lie. That's rarer than you think." She had been the one who tested the alloy. Her initials were on the material certs, a small, careful M in the corner of pages no one would ever read. He had not been able to file the case in a drawer he opened often, and he had not been able to throw it away, so it lived on the top shelf in the dark, the way some griefs do, where you know exactly where they are and you do not reach for them. Back at the tower, Vivian could not have said why the cleaning man stayed in her head. Maybe it was that he had looked at her for that extra second, not angry, not afraid, only steady, the way a man looks at weather he has already decided to walk through. Maybe it was nothing. But 2 days later, when one of her process engineers brought her a stack of qualification charts for the Aldbourne due diligence, and she could not make the numbers tell a story she trusted, she found herself wishing she had someone who would just look at the thing and tell her plainly what it was. She had the chart spread on the long table in her office at 8 that night when she heard a card in the hall. She opened the door. Silas was wiping the baseboards of the executive floor, alone, the building empty around him. "The seal data," she said before she had decided to say anything at all. "The fatigue curves. Come look at this and tell me if I'm reading it wrong." He should have said it wasn't his place. He came in instead because he could see from the doorway that she was reading it wrong, and 3 years of silence had not entirely killed the part of him that could not stand to watch a good machine be misunderstood. He set the rag on the cart. He looked at the top chart for perhaps 5 seconds. "This curve's been smoothed," he said. "Somebody fitted a clean line through it. The real data scatters past 8,000 cycles. You've got a knee right here that somebody sanded off." He touched the page without quite touching it. "The seal doesn't fail at the new spec. The chart says it does. Those are different things." She stared at him. "How would you know that?" "You can see it," he said. "The points don't sit on the line. Lines don't lie. People draw them." He picked up the rag again. "Whoever gave you this wanted you to believe the part is weaker than it is. I'd ask them why." He finished the baseboards and left. She sat with the charts until midnight. She went looking the next morning, quietly, the way she had learned to do things in 18 months of not trusting the men her father had trusted. She pulled the badge logs and the floor records. There was no engineer named on the cleaning contract, of course. There was a name on the maintenance roster, S. Renner, 3 years, no incidents. She typed it into the patent database almost as a joke. It was not a joke. The foundational patent on the turbine seal, the one part Aldbourne had crossed 3 states to buy, the one asset that made Marchetti Dynamics worth $400 million, listed its sole inventor as Silas A. Renner. Filed 9 years ago. Licensed to Marchetti Dynamics, not assigned. The license required the inventor's countersignature to transfer. She sat back in her chair. The man she had told to take his smell somewhere else owned the keystone of her entire company, and he had not said one word about it. She found Esther Okafor in the records vault on the 3rd floor that afternoon, a woman in her 60s who had kept the company's files since before Vivian was born, gray hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain, hands that had stopped trembling only because she had decided they would. Vivian asked her about Silas Renner. Esther set down her pen. She looked at Vivian for a long moment, the way you look at someone's child when you have known them since they were small and you are about to decide how much of the truth they can carry. "Leave that one be," Esther said. "I can't." "No," Esther said softly. "I don't suppose you can. You've got your father's same way of not being able to." She took off her reading glasses and let them hang on the beaded chain. I'll tell you the thing I told him the last month he was alive. There are men on this floor who learned everything a ghost knew except the part about why he did any of it. Watch the ones who smile when there's no cause to." Then she bent back to her files, and that was the end of what she would say in daylight. But Vivian went up to her office and pulled 3 years of consulting disbursements and read them line by line until the numbers began, very faintly, to tell a different story than the one she'd been handed. That evening, Silas was changing the flat tire on Wren's bicycle in the yellow square of the porch light when the dark sedan pulled up and Vivian got out. She did not have a jacket. She stood at the edge of the property line and did not come in. "You're the inventor of the seal," she said. "S.A. Renner, you hold the patent." He pumped the tire and tested it with his thumb. "I clean your floors," he said. "Don't," she said. "Please. I had a chart on my desk built to make me sell my own company for parts. You looked at it for 5 seconds. I need to understand what I'm sitting on top of, and you're the only person who built it." Wren came to the screen door in her pajamas. "Dad, who is it?" "Someone from work," Silas said. "Go on up. I'll be there in a minute." The girl looked at Vivian with frank assessment, the way children do, and then went. Silas wiped his hands on his jeans and looked at the woman at his gate for a while. "I left that building for a reason," he said. "I'm not going back into it." "I'm not asking you to come back," she said. "I'm asking you to tell me the truth one time. After that, you never have to see me again." He thought about it longer than she expected. Then he opened the gate. Inside, at the kitchen table, with Wren asleep upstairs, he told her the shape of it without the wound at the center. He had been the principal seal engineer under her father. He had built the turbine seal across 4 years, 8 hours a day, and he had filed the patent in his own name with her father's blessing, because Auguste Marchetti had been an old-fashioned man who believed a maker should own the thing he made. Then, Maeve had gotten sick. Silas had taken leave to be with her, and after she died, he had not been able to walk back into a building full of clean rooms and tolerance gauges and the smell of cutting oil that she had loved, so he had told his lawyer to bury the engineer and let a man named S. Renner push a cart instead, 10 minutes from his daughter's school. "Who built the false chart?" Vivian asked. "You tell me who signs your merger," Silas said. "That's where it starts. A part doesn't lie about itself. Someone made it lie." She drove home with the windows down and the cold coming in, and she thought about Roland Sutter, her chief operating officer, her father's right hand for 20 years, the man who had brought her the Aldbourne deal and the man who had handed her the charts. Roland Sutter was 56 and had the easy warmth of a man who had never once in his life been told no. He had run the floor when Auguste ran the company, and he had expected when Auguste died that the board would see the obvious thing and put him in the chair instead of a daughter who had spent her 20s in another industry. They had not. He had smiled and congratulated her and begun, quietly, to build the door he would leave through. The Aldbourne merger was that door. The terms he had negotiated devalued the seal patent on paper, routed a consulting fee through a shell in his wife's maiden name, and handed Aldbourne a company they could strip for the defense contracts and shutter the rest. $16 million would land in a trust Vivian would never find, and the 400 people on the floor would find their machines cold by spring. He needed the patent to transfer clean, and the patent needed Silas Renner's signature, and Roland Sutter had solved that problem the way he solved most problems, by forging it. A junior clerk's credentials, a borrowed scanner, a signature traced from a 9-year-old filing. He had assumed the inventor was long gone. He had not known the man was wiping swarf off the guard glass 40 feet from his office every morning. Vivian asked Esther for the original qualification file, the real one, the one before the chart was smoothed. Esther looked at her for a long time, and then she went to the back of the vault to a row of plain binders and pulled one that had no label and set it on the table. "Your father told me to keep this where the system couldn't reach it," Esther said. "He didn't trust the network. He didn't trust some of the people on this floor. He never told me why. I think he was getting ready to tell you and ran out of time." Inside was the original seal data, the scatter Silas had described, the knee at 8,000 cycles exactly where he said it would be, signed and dated in his own hand. Behind it, clipped, was something Esther had added herself, A printout of an internal email from 3 months ago from Roland Sutter's account to a forwarding address inside Aldbourne's investment arm. One line. Remove the original qualification set from the server by end of day. Vivian held the page and felt the floor of her own company tilt under her. She went back to the North Edge house on a Thursday night, and this time Wren opened the door before her father could, and looked up at her and said, "You're the lady from work who reads charts wrong, because children repeat the parts adults wish they wouldn't." Silas came out of the kitchen with a dish towel over his shoulder, and Vivian held up the binder, and he understood at once. He read it at the table, slowly, the way he read anything that mattered, the load-bearing part first. When he reached the email, he set his hand flat on the page and held it there. His knuckles went white, and then he let the breath out, and his hand opened again, the deliberate way of a man who had decided, a long time ago, not to make a fist in front of his daughter. "He traced your name," Vivian said, "onto the assignment. They're going to transfer your patent on Friday at the signing with a signature you never made." "I know that signature," Silas said quietly. "I've signed it 10,000 times. He got the R wrong. He always closes the loop. I never close the loop." He almost smiled. It did not reach anywhere. He's been in that building 30 years, and he never once watched how a man signs his own work. Wren had come back down in her socks and crossed straight to Vivian and held up a fresh drawing without asking, the way she did with people she had decided about. It was 3 figures now, a man, a girl, and a woman, with dark hair pulled back, holding hands under a yellow sun. Vivian took it in both hands, like it was something that might break. She had not been given anything for free in a long time. Silas watched his daughter, and then he watched the woman holding his daughter's drawing, and the hardness he carried like a tool belt loosened by one notch. "I'm not asking you to fight him," Vivian said. "I came to give you the truth. You deserve to see who signed your name." "You didn't come for that," Silas said. He was not unkind about it. "You came because you don't have anyone to tell when you're tired." She did not answer, which was its own answer. "The signing's Friday," he said. "Where?" "The Investor Summit, 400 people. Aldbourne wants it public so the board can't walk it back." He stood and took the dish towel off his shoulder and folded it and set it on the counter. "Then we go Friday," he said, and she noticed that he had said "we," and she did not remark on it, because she had learned by then that with him the important words came in small, and you did not chase them. Roland Sutter learned that Vivian had been in the vault from a clerk who owed him a favor, and he moved the way frightened, careful men move, smoothly. On Thursday afternoon, a man Silas did not know was parked across from Wren's school at pickup, taking pictures with a phone held low. Mateo, the shop foreman, a barrel-chested man who had called Silas by his right name since the second week because he had recognized the hands, called Silas that evening and told him a stranger had been on the floor asking which cart was his. Silas drove Wren to her grandmother's that night, Maeve's mother, 4 blocks over, and stood in the doorway and told the old woman to lock everything and open the door for no one with a badge until he came back. Wren held his sleeve at the door. "Are you in trouble?" she asked. "No, baby," he said. "Somebody else is. I'm just the one who's going to say so." The Aldbourne Summit filled the Harbor Hotel ballroom on Friday night. 400 chairs, crystal light, a long stage, a row of cameras at the back. Roland Sutter stood 3 feet to Vivian's right at the lectern in a navy suit, smiling the smile of a man who has already counted the votes. The ice sculpture on the back table had begun, very slowly, to weep. Vivian opened with the financials, clean and routine, and Roland relaxed a half-inch, because he believed he was watching an ordinary evening end the way he had built it to end. Then she said, "Before we sign, I want to introduce the man who designed the asset you're all here to buy." And the room turned, and Silas walked up the side stairs in the one dark suit he owned, 10 years out of fashion, pressed that afternoon, carrying a thin leather folio. He did not look at the cameras. He had been photographed before, in a life he had set down. He found Wren in the 3rd row on Mateo's shoulders, waving with both hands like she was bringing a plane in, and the corner of his mouth moved, and that was all. He set the folio on the lectern and did not read from it. "My name is Silas Renner," he said. "I'm the inventor of the seal. I built it in this company across 4 years, and the patent is in my name, and it has never been assigned to anyone." He let that sit. "The transfer scheduled for tonight carries my signature. I didn't sign it. You can see it from the back of the room if you know what to look for. Whoever traced it closed the loop on the R. I never closed the loop." The screen behind him changed. Vivian put up the real qualification data beside the smooth chart, the scatter, and the sanded line, the knee at 8,000 cycles. Then, the forged assignment beside a true signature, the difference circled in red by a forensic examiner 2 days fast. Then, the email, one line from one account, removed the original qualification set from the server by end of day. "The seal does not fail at your spec," Silas said to the Aldbourne men. "It was made to look like it fails, so you'd buy a company you could close. The man who built that chart is standing on this stage. I'm not here to accuse anyone. I'm here so the record says what the engineers in that building actually built." He looked once at the third row, not at Wren, but past her, to 2 gray-haired men in borrowed suits, the 2 SEAL technicians Roland had let go the same quarter Silas left. "Most of the people who built this aren't in the room," he said. "Their names are in the folio. I'd like them on the record, too." He stepped back from the microphone. The silence had weight. Roland Sutter stood, and his face had gone the color of the paper the lies were printed on. "You walked away 9 years ago," he said. "Don't pretend there's still anyone left who answers to you." Silas looked at him and did not raise his voice. "I don't need anyone to answer to me," he said. "I just need you to know I still remember everything." Vivian took the microphone. "Roland Sutter is removed from this company effective now. The Aldbourne transaction will not proceed. We are referring the qualification fraud and the forged assignment to the Bureau and to the SEC tonight." The applause started in the third row, where the 2 old technicians sat, and moved in waves to the back. In the elevator lobby, 2 agents were already waiting, and Roland Sutter walked to them without resistance, which was worse than if he had run. In the weeks after, the story moved through the trade press and then the wires. Roland Sutter was charged with fraud, forgery, and tampering, and the consulting trust in his wife's maiden name unwound itself in a single afternoon under a subpoena. 2 board members who had nodded along quietly resigned. Vivian declined every interview that reached her office and gave the press one written statement, 11 sentences long, and signed her name to it. She met each of the purged engineers in person, drove to 3 states in a month to do it, sat in their kitchens and threw whatever they needed to say to her, and did not interrupt. The SEAL technicians Roland had purged came back, and the line stayed warm through the spring, and 400 people kept their machines. Vivian ran the company differently after that, not as an inheritance to defend, but as a thing 400 families stood on. And she built a restitution fund for the engineers Sutter had pushed out across 20 years and named it the Maeve Renner Fund, after a metallurgist she had never met before she had told Silas she was going to. Silas did not come back to the floor. He filed papers instead for a small shop of his own in a converted warehouse 2 towns over, Renner Precision, 9 people, 6 of them faces from the old days who had been waiting in their various small lives for someone to call. Marchetti Dynamics was one of his contracts. He answered to no one. He kept wiping his own benches because he liked the way a clean machine sounded. He went to see the 2 technicians the week the line came back warm, the ones who had sat in the third row in borrowed suits, and he sat in their kitchens and let them say whatever they needed to say about the years they had lost. And he did not interrupt, and he did not apologize for being the one who got to come back loud when they had only come back quiet. On a gray morning in March, Vivian drove him to the cemetery at the edge of town where Maeve was buried, and stayed 3 steps back while he laid a sprig of something he had pulled from the fence line on the stone, and he said, "Lo, not quite to anyone. I kept it honest, the thing you tested." He did not say more. Vivian did not come closer. She understood that her place at that moment was not near her, and that there are conversations a man has with a stone that a living person is only allowed to stand near, not inside. Vivian started coming by on the weekends, first with a reason and then without one. She traded her heels for boots she bought at the farm store, and by the 3rd week they had real mud on them. One evening, she watched Silas teach Wren to set a bearing into a hub, his big hands over the girl's small ones, slow, no-wasted motion, the same economy she had seen him use on a $5,000 spindle and on a child's bicycle chain. As if to him there were no difference between the two, only things that needed doing right. "Feel its seat," he told the girl. "Don't force it. If you have to force it, it's wrong. Wren felt its seat and looked up at him with the particular pride of a child who has been trusted with a real thing, and Vivian, watching from the doorway with a cup of coffee going cold in her hand, understood that this was the whole of him, that the man did not have a second self he was hiding, that the engineer and the janitor and the father were one quiet person all the way down. Wren taught her to draw skies, which had rules, apparently, blue at the top and white in the middle and soft pink at the bottom. Press light. Those were the rules. Daddy said so. Vivian pressed light. The white blended into the blue and became something almost sky-shaped, and Wren put her own small hand over Vivian's to guide it to the right place on the page, and then let go, and Vivian did not move for a full breath afterward. On a clear Saturday in May, the three of them painted the door of the new shop, Silas on the ladder doing the top, Wren crouched at the bottom with a brush too big for the job, Vivian working the middle in one of his old flannels that did not quite fit. Wren looked up and asked, "Are you going to stay forever?" The way children ask the questions adults are too careful to, and Vivian glanced up the ladder where Silas had stopped and was looking down at her, and she said, "I'm thinking about it." Silas came down the ladder slowly and set it against the wall and asked Wren to go find a thicker brush in the truck, and the girl ran off across the gravel, and he turned to Vivian. The shop smelled of fresh paint and pine and cut metal cooling. "You don't have to promise a child something you haven't promised yourself," he said. "I'm promising both of them," she said. At the same time, he looked at her for a long moment, then he raised his hand and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear with the back of one knuckle, the first time he had touched her in all the weeks she had been coming. She did not pull back. He did not move closer. It was a moment, no more, but it was long enough for both of them to know it had finally arrived. Wren came back across the gravel with the wrong brush entirely, and slipped one hand into her father's and one into Vivian's, and turned the three of them gently to face the half-painted door, the way she did, as if this had always been the arrangement, and she had only been waiting for the grown-ups to catch up. By summer, the shop sign was up over the door in plain letters, and the neighbors brought their old trucks and their teenagers' first cars, and Silas charged them honestly and sometimes not at all. Wren ran a lemonade stand by the bay door for 50 cents a cup, and on a good Saturday was the second highest earner on the lot. Vivian kept a small office in the city 2 days a month for the fund and let the rest of it go. The penthouse, the calls from the old life, the friends who stopped calling when she stopped answering, and she found, by the third month, that she did not miss any of it. A man had been told to take himself and the smell of his work somewhere out of sight, and the people who told him had not known, could not have known, that the quiet man with the rag was the one thing the whole building was standing on. Some men carry their worth where everyone can see it, others carry it in their hands, and you only learn what those hands were holding when you finally stop long enough to watch them work.